Okay, let's just dive in. Hi guys, welcome back to Off the Shelf. Welcome back to book club. Welcome to our book club episode. If you're new here, basically like every 4 episodes are generally our book club episode. So for May, we just read Promise Me Sunshine by Cara Bastone. So this episode is like a dedicated deep dive into what I liked and didn't like about this book, but truthfully, not to spoil the episode, there are not many things about this book that I didn't like. I don't think there was anything about this book where I was like, ooh, I had some like, anyways, we will obviously get into that. But where was I going with this? Okay. But before we like dive into things today, it's a solo episode. So life update wise, we're not batch filming, but we are kind of, because at the time of this episode going live, I will be in London, which is so fun. I haven't taken like a vacation in a hot minute where I wasn't going for like the sake of work or to work or anything related to work. But next week, 2 of my friends and I are heading over to the pond to go to London for, I think we're there for like 9-10 days. And I've been before, my other friend has been there before. And then the third one, we're going to like celebrate her birthday. She's never been. So the trip will be like a mix of like touristy and non-touristy things in London. So if you have any recommendations, please DM me. Bookstores, food, markets, like little day trips outside of London. We just booked our train tickets to Bath, which I've never been to before. So that'll be so fun. What other life updates do I have for I got my nails done. You know when you get your nails done and like I love them, but at the same time I'm like I don't love them. They're very pink and pink is not me, but they are growing on me. I'm working with it. There's also like little cherries on them. And also just having my nails done sometimes means I can't do certain things as quick, like typing. And that brings me back to like trying to write essays with acrylics in high school. But we're working on it and they look great. And I got them done because I'm going away. But let's just like get into the book. Already I don't think I have any other updates as of right now. Because I feel like we just filmed because we've been filming so much before I go away. But we are diving into things. Basically how the episode will run, if you haven't watched our other book club episode, is I am going to just like, also, if you haven't read this book, probably don't listen or watch this episode. It is a full, like, spoiler riddled episode. Getting into like kind of what happened in the book, what I liked, how the romance was, how the grief was like intertwined, what you should read next, like call outs like about the author. The episode is kind of going to run different than our other one, which was For Famous Last Words by Gillian McAllister, because that was that was a thriller. So I'm talking about like my out-of-pocket theories and things like that. This one's a little bit different. This one is also like a totally different vibe than Famous Last Words, but I'm just going to stop. I'm not going to stop talking, but I'm going to stop rambling on and just like get into things as to why I picked up this book for May Book Club, because truthfully, this book came across my desk, and by that I mean I saw it on TikTok, and it didn't grab me. The cover, gorgeous. Like that is what initially caught my eye, but when I read the synopsis on Goodreads, I was like, best friend passes away and it's friends to lovers, and it just like wasn't my vibe. And maybe like back in, I think this came out at the end of March, I wasn't ready for a tearjerker of a book, because I had like debated about doing it for April, but we had already also done like 2 back-to-back romances. Anyways, I don't know what gave me the spark to do this book for May, but it kind of just like felt like a May book. I wanted to go back to the romance roots. I wanted a book that was going to make people cry, which like sounds not great, but I found that First Time Caller and Beg, Borrow, or Steal were like very rom-com vibes, and I wanted something a little bit different. I wanted something that felt like The X-Files by Jessica Joyce, which we read last August. I didn't sob at that book, but like I had a couple tears coming out at the end. I wanted a book that was gonna like pack a little bit more of a punch, but still have that like rom-com vibe that we all love. So on top of having a book that was like gonna provoke a lot of emotions in people. I also picked up this book, and we all know, maybe some of you know where like this is coming and some of you don't. This might be a hot take, but I think that the first line of a book tells so much about that book. And if I'm just like browsing an Indigo and I like the cover, but I pick up the book and I read that first line and I'm not vibing with the first line, I'm probably not going to get it. I might eventually read it, but I find that the first line can like almost make or break a book. And if the first line has I or me in it, I'm also more inclined to pick it up because I love being like thrown into the character's mind immediately. And that's what we got with this book. I think the first line was something oh my gosh. I cannot speak sometimes. Something along the lines of like, this baby won't stop judging me, or this baby is judging me, or something like that. And I was like, I immediately love her. I'm immediately invested as to who this character is, where this baby came from, why is it judging her? Like, I have all these questions immediately. Unfortunately, if we are talking about like setting the scene or like, I'm trying to think of a different example that just like wouldn't tickle my fancy, but it mainly comes in from like if we're using a bunch of descriptive words or if it's a really run-on sentence first, it's just like not for me. So I love lines of dialogue. I love an inner thought, like anything to do with a character, and I'm pretty much hooked. And I was immediately like hooked on Lenny as a character. So the first line just like hooked me. Another reason why I picked up this book and I wanted to do it for May Book Club was the reviews. I don't know if anyone has taken the gander over on Fable or Storygraph or Goodreads. I don't think I've seen this many 5-star reviews for a book. And okay, well, I'm going to take that back. I saw a lot for First Time Caller and I didn't give that book 5 stars. I think I gave it 3.75 or something like that. So granted, like, that many 5-star reviews does not mean that everyone is going to give it 5 stars. It does not mean I'm going to give it 5 stars. But I had like a good inkling that it was going to be a good book. And honestly, like some of the reviews and some of the like not sob stories is not what I'm looking for, but the impact that this book had and the way it talked about grief and the way it was interwoven into these characters, into this fictional made up world helped so many people. And it honestly, there are very, very few times where I finish a book and I give it a rating and then I change that rating. But going through the Goodreads reviews, and there was another aspect that I will talk about in a little bit, but going through these Goodreads reviews and seeing the impact that this book had on people not only made me want to read this book, but kind of like made me want to give it a higher rating because it just had this incredible, beautiful, like helpful impact on so many people who I'm like friends with on Goodreads and I have talked to. And so we had our May Book Club pick. It just like felt right, I guess, at the end of the day. So I know we've all read this book, we know what it's about, but I'm going to give myself a little, like, I'm going to jog my memory, I'm going to jog your memory about like kind of what this book is about. Promise Me Sunshine follows Lenny, who is going through it. Lenny just lost her best friend Lou to a long battle with cancer, and she has blocked out her parents. She's not going back to her apartment because that's where her and Lou used to live, and she is completely ignoring this like live again list that her and Lou had made before she had passed away to like essentially live again. And the only thing that is bringing her joy right now is going to these babysitting gigs and hanging out with kids and making kids happy, which are in turn helping her. So her newest babysitting gig is with a single mom named Reese, her daughter Ainsley, and she immediately kind of like clicks with them. And upon meeting them, she also meets Miles, who is Ainsley's uncle. And Lenny can kind of like immediately tell that there's a rift in the family, like there's something going on between Miles and Reese. So the simplest way of putting this, that is like also used in the synopsis, is that Miles can tell that Lenny is going through something. She's experiencing a lot of grief, and without giving away too much, Miles also shares that he too has gone through grief. So again, in the simplest way of things, but the book is so much deeper than this, is Miles agrees to help Lenny complete her live again list and find the joy in living without her best friend. And in turn, Lenny agrees to help Miles kind of like bridge the gap between, like, kind of repair the family a little bit. At the time of starting this book, we didn't know what had happened between Reese and Miles. So Lenny agrees that she will kind of like help Miles reintegrate himself and repair things with Reese, which will in turn help with Ainsley. And that's pretty much, like, obviously you've read this book, you know what happens. So let's just like kind of dive into things from there. My first impressions of this book very early on was that this book was going to be fucking fantastic. I, like I mentioned before, loved Lenny because not only is she super raw and opinionated, but you can tell, not even deep down, but on the surface, she is also this kind and warm-hearted person with the way she interacts with every single person around her. I just like her as an FMC, and there are other things later in this episode where actually, I'm not going to stick around and you will find out about her as an FMC because I'm shocked to find some things out. But the way that she just put others in front of herself, and whether or not this was like a distraction for her grief, or I think it's a little bit of both, but I think deep down she's just this incredible person. But she was also just like very funny. She had talked about like hating running, which I was like, same, like me too. I'm slowly getting back into it, but it sucks. It hurts. And she was talking about like not wanting to go to hot yoga and the little like fantasies that she came up with every time before meeting a man. And truthfully, I didn't get what was going on for a little bit. As we know, I'm a skim reader. Sometimes I miss very minuscule details. And early on in this book, that was one of the things where I was like, what's going on? Because I think she had done it twice before she did it with Miles. And then I remember reading not the dialogue, but like the inner monologue of her creating this fantasy for her and Miles. And I was like, did we just get hit in the face with insta-love? And then I had to go back a little bit and realize what she was doing, like fantasizing and creating these like crazy worlds about like how long she was going to be with men and everything. But like, it was just, once I finally got like the grasp on that, it was just like, it was so her. And then there were other points in the book where like she flip-flopped between this like raw, opinionated, selfless person, but selfless, I'm just going to go with that, because at the wedding, and now this is not like an early impression of her, but this kind of like supported the early impression of her. And that was when they were at the wedding for one of Miles's friends, and Miles's ex Kira was there. And immediately when you see an ex in a book, and I'm getting deja vu right now, I've definitely talked about exes in a book before now, but it's never a good thing, and it always creates like some sort of drama. And I was a little worried that was like where the book was headed. And I didn't want that. We already have this like compelling story about grief and heartache and trying to live again. And I didn't want some like stupid ex shit being thrown in there. So I was a little bit worried. But it was very clear from the beginning that, and I think at this point, I don't think Lenny had like fully figured out how she felt about Miles, but every interaction she had with Kira did not like, it did not, what is the word I'm trying to think of? Like, it didn't give off any jealous or envious vibes or any like bitchiness at all. It was kind of just like, she was there for Miles, and Kira like cheated on Miles and went with someone. Like, it just, Lenny did not have any, Lenny didn't have to be nice, and she was there, and she just like didn't care, and she moved on. And I think like, even in my own life, like we just like need to do that more often. Anyways, loved her. We can move on from Lenny. But I love her as an FMC. Another early impression I had, which I have briefly talked about already, I knew this book was going to like pack a punch. Her sleeping on the Staten Island ferry very early on in this book to avoid going home, like I think that was when I was like, this is like, she is hurting. She is in hell. Like, this is to not want to go home to the comfort of your own home, even somewhere like where your best friend, like you lived, like the fact that she wasn't even going to do that, I knew it was going to hurt. And I was ready for it. Again, like back in March, I don't think I would have loved it as much as right now, where I'm just like in a good place with, I just feel good. But this book definitely packed a punch. My early impression of that was very spot on. Another early impression that I had was and this is not revolutionary in the slightest, but Miles was very misunderstood as a character. I don't know what, I would be curious. I wish Cara Bastone could come on the podcast. Maybe we will try to do that, because I have so many, I would just love to like dig through her brain and figure out how this all was constructed, because I felt like early on we were supposed to maybe not love Miles or Reese. I felt like the writing, or maybe it wasn't, but normally there are unlikable characters in books, and one of them is painted as kind of like the bad guy, and I felt like it could have gone either way, but I didn't hate Reese for her opinions once like we figure out what happened, and I didn't hate Miles for being like closed off and misunderstood. He was just very, very misunderstood. But I think he very quickly became someone that you can so easily depend on. I think Lenny knew, and we as readers knew, that he was always going to show up. He never stopped doing the list with her. He did the talent show with Ainsley. Like, he was just like, but he's not like, I was gonna say he's not book boyfriend material, although like I'm using the term book boyfriend material less and less these days. I don't know why, but he was just like a good MMC in my opinion. Last early impression that I had of this book, and this is going to sound obvious, but it's not, as someone who loves New York and has been to New York probably around like 10 or 12 times in the last 2-3 years. I don't know. It doesn't matter. I've been to New York a lot. I love the city. And this is a book that is very obviously set in New York, but a lot of books are set in New York, and a lot of books don't give the like New York vibe. I feel like they just like use the big city name because people love a love story in New York, but I felt like this book screamed New York, and it was not scream New York. It did scream New York, but in a way that it was like interwoven very nicely in the story of like, they were talking about certain subway lines. Like they were talking about like the Q train or the Q line. And they were talking about the Upper West Side and Lower East Side. And like, I don't think they named any restaurants by name, but it was just very clear that Lenny was a New Yorker at heart and loved the city. And there was even, what did she say? There was a line. Damn. It was like, they were going to drive somewhere, and Miles was like, do you want to drive or do you want me to drive? And Lenny was like, I'm a New Yorker. Like, I've never set my foot on the gas pedal. And I was like, I love you. I love New York. And the Staten Island ferry, of course. I felt like there was just like so many good aspects of New York sprinkled in here. Okay, now let's dive into the romance a little bit. Again, like this episode outline, like structure is different than Famous Last Words, because it's just like, obviously they're different books. So I didn't know how to split it up, but we're just going to like dive into the romance, because I truthfully was a bit worried about the romance when we were like coming to the halfway point of this book. If you don't already subscribe to our Substack, please go do that. It's always in the description of all of our videos. But I put out a newsletter every week on like a little like, it's not a discussion post, but I basically just like yap, but I text, like type. It's like a newsletter about my thoughts in the book. We like break up the chapters. There are discussion questions. There are book recs. There are like, it's kind of like the podcast in written format, but I talk about different things, obviously. Anyway, so when I was writing last week's newsletter, I was talking about how, now this is a little bit of overlap, but it all connects back in the end. I was worried about the romance because I was like, we are at 50% and there is nothing going on. I'm not complaining. I do not need spice or smut in any book. I love a buildup. I love tension. I don't want them to kiss until after that 50% mark. Well, we were at 50% and these characters didn't even contemplate kissing, hooking up, touch. Like they came nowhere near each other. And I was still enjoying it. My worry came from the fact that I didn't want to get to like 75, 85% and just be like, bam, like we're going to sleep together. I didn't want that because that tends to happen in slow burn romances because there's a very like good formula. Don't know what it is, but some books just get it and some other ones don't. But there's a very specific formula for like writing a good slow burn romance that has readers still invested in the story, but you're like still asking for more, I guess. Anyway, so the first 50% of this book is a goddamn miracle. We didn't feel like any insta love. Like the slow burn was slow burning. But then the thing was, since I like blind write out like our chapter markers for what we're going to read each week, I should have, maybe not. Maybe it was like meant to be, but we finished up to chapter 21. I'm almost positive. Chapter 21, probably at the midway point. And then the following chapter, and I don't think I've really ever, I mean, this book is so different from any other book that I've read, but Lenny coming to the realization that she had feelings for Miles, I was like, I don't have a sister, but I felt like I was gabbing with a sister. It was just such a good way to put it. And whether or not like the grief was overshadowing how she felt, or she just like kind of like realized all at once. I wrote out the quote. I like keep my iPad under my blanket over here, but she said, "Do some people slowly fall in love and not realize it? Have I been in denial? Or did he hand me a locket with my best friend's face glued into it and bam, just like that, 200 gallons of feelings upturned into my head?" We'll shout it from the rooftops. I love Lenny. The way that she slowly but very quickly came to the realization that she had feelings for Miles was so, so funny. It like, yes, felt like a sister and a best friend and like all this, like the way that she then like tried to almost seduce him. Not really. That sounds out of context. That sounds bad. But I think she could obviously tell that he liked her and everyone else around her could tell that they liked each other. But maybe she was the only one like wanting to do something about it. And then I don't even think they tried to kiss until 75%, which is right. Does that make sense? I think so, because then he was like, she went to kiss him and then he was like, wait, or something like that. I actually wrote it on my notes. Took them 72% of the book to actually kiss, which in my opinion, that's how you do a slow burn. I'm so sorry to those who want. I'm fine with insta like. I don't like insta love. Anyways, moving on from that. Another like hot take maybe I have about this book. These two could have been friends. The way that this slow burn worked was that it wasn't really a slow burn until like maybe 40%. Like that first 40%, these characters are getting so acquainted with each other as humans and not as romantic or sexual. Like there was no romantic or sexual tension within the first 40 to maybe 45% of this book. And I loved it. And I think that's what you need in a book that is so heavy on grief and heartache and losing your best friend. And I think it was integral to the story to have this like friends to lovers, like really heavy on friends. I don't like friends to lovers, but maybe I need to change my tune on that, because I said this in the last episode about Emily Henry. And I love people meet on vacation. That is very clear. I like very certain friends to lovers, where they're very clearly friends and they're not thinking about sleeping with the other one. And I felt like that's what we got here. Whereas like in Beg, Borrow, or Steal or First Time Caller, like not that they were like too quick, but they definitely weren't giving like a slow burn in terms of attraction or in terms of feelings, because I think those characters very quickly within the first couple chapters like noted that attraction. And I'm kind of glad we didn't get that in this book. And I'm kind of glad, I don't think I've ever said this about a book, but I kind of didn't want the like male point of view in this book. Again, maybe it's because I just liked Lenny so much, but I found that we could see who Miles was as a character and as a person very easily through Lenny's perspective, so much that we didn't need, and maybe like it wouldn't have been the same if we had his point of view, because we could just like see the things he was doing for Lenny without having his inner monologue. And it was great. That kind of wraps up like the romance, my like romance thoughts on it. We can kind of move into grief, which I'm gonna like start this off by saying I am very fortunate and very lucky in this moment to not have been impacted by a ton of grief in my life. So I connected these characters and I loved all of them. Like truthfully, there was no unlikable characters in this book other than that like one 6-year-old woman who was kind of a bitch. I honestly don't remember, but we didn't like her. But I couldn't fully connect with the characters on like that grief level because of that. But that doesn't mean I wasn't like emotionally, I cried. There were 2 main scenes that I cried over. And the first one was when she called her mom to come see her. And we didn't know the backstory to her parents. And again, I might have missed this, but I'm pretty sure they weren't talked about a lot. So my like first impression of Lenny's relationship with her parents was going to be that like maybe they weren't that close, truthfully, and that was the reason why she had blocked them out. But when Lenny called her mom, I quickly realized that like that wasn't the case. And obviously her parents didn't. Also, her parents calling her, her mom calls her Helen and her dad calls her Elena, because they just couldn't decide, and then everyone calls her Lenny, which I think is just so, and that like that at its core is like one of the like that's just like that's their relationship. And I wish I had maybe known that earlier on in the book, because I thought she was shutting her parents out for a totally different reason. But she was just shutting them out because she's just so overwhelmed with the grief and everything like that. But when she's talking with her mom, first of all, I think I cried when she called her mom and they just like came and hugged, and her parents like just like finally got to see her again. But when her mom looked at her and said, "He treats you well," and Lenny said, what did she say? Lenny said, "Mom, he walked into hell and dragged me back out." Sobbed. Like just the emotional impact of Lenny talking about like how much hell and torment and sadness and depression she has gone through by herself, truthfully. Like we know she's blocking everyone out for a large, I don't know how soon, it says in the book, but I can't recall how long it had been since Lou had passed. But her rekindling her relationship, not rekindling the relationship, but just like finally seeing her mom again, I think helped so much. And I'm very close with my parents, and it just like, oh my God, it just like hit a soft spot. I was just like, I think I was reading that part. I think I was reading it on the train, going home, and it's just like, I'm trying to blink as fast as I can. Like it was just like, not even like devastating, just like packs a punch. And then the second scene that also packed a punch was when she finally cut her hair. And if you don't remember, when Lou was going through the cancer treatment, she was losing her hair. So Lenny wanted to shave her head as well. These two feel more like soul sisters than best friends sometimes. And then, so they both shaved their heads, and then Lou needed to do it again following more cancer treatment, and she asked Lenny not to cut her hair. So since then, Lenny had never let anyone touch her hair, and her going into the hair salon and getting it all chopped off and donating it to cancer, which she didn't even know at the time. Like, she just, I don't know, it was just like, it felt like such a big step for her. Obviously it was a big step for her, but I just like, you felt that as the reader, how she had been delaying anyone touching her hair, anyone cutting her hair for so long, and her taking this step. And the hairdresser, like, this is what I mean about this book being like a rom-com, but also having like really good grief woven into it, is she went to the hair salon and the hairdresser was like, I have a dinner, but if you tip well, like, I'll do whatever you want. Like, in a very joking, lighthearted way, but it kind of like lightened up the moment a little bit, while the scene of Lenny cutting her hair into a bob and then Miles' reaction to it and loving it was just like pure, and it was heartwarming. The last thing I will say about the grief in this book that I think was brilliant and smart on behalf of this author was that Miles also had grief. I would find it very hard to believe that Miles would just like help. And this is nothing against his character. This is just like how people operate in general. I think that if Miles didn't understand the grief, I don't think he would have been, I know he wouldn't have been able to help Lenny so much. And just like, he's a stranger in New York. Like, there would be no plausible reason for him to help Lenny complete this list and learn to live again. And while it wouldn't happen in the real world, like, sometimes author will do these like not unrealistic things in books, but kind of, they will like these scenarios that they couldn't happen in real life. But I found that Miles having the grief from losing his mom and his cousin in that accident all those years ago gave him the ability to heal over the years and gave him the ability to help Lenny properly. Again, like a random stranger in New York, whether or not he's the uncle of the person you are babysitting, is not going to sleep on the subway with you overnight. He's not going to help you create this list. He is not, I'm ransacking my, he did so many things in this book. And I think his relationship with grief allows me to believe that like this could actually happen in real life. This is not too far-fetched. And the two of them together as characters just like they were something else. They were hurting so much at so many different points, and they were still there to help each other. Moving past grief a little bit, this is what I was talking about at the beginning of the episode as to like things about the FMC. When I am choosing a book, I obviously read a bunch of reviews, and I'm looking at it on TikTok. And the one consistent thing that I saw about this book in Goodreads reviews, on Storygraph, on TikTok, was that people didn't like Lenny. And that was the reason why they gave it a low star. What? Did we read the same book? Even I texted my friend yesterday saying that like, I'm like, you have to go read this book. And she was like, I did, but I gave it 3 stars because I didn't like Lenny. I don't understand. So when I was reading a lot of the reviews, and I'm adding this part in because normally I would add in like things that I didn't like, but I didn't have anything that I truthfully, what's one thing I didn't like about this book? Nothing. I can't find one single flaw in this book. It was beautifully done. Anyways, it's beautifully done. I'm ending the sentence there, but a lot of the reviews said that Lenny was like weird and cringy. She had like a line that was like, what did she say? She was like, Miles like had his arms up and she was like, I like his armpit hair, but I probably shouldn't say that out loud. And it was just like such a random thought. And people were like, why would she say that? Because that's what she was thinking at the time. Like, people have I don't know, like she was fun. She was so fucking funny and real and raw and just like, anyway, so that was the main consistent thing that I saw people not like about this book, and they didn't see why Miles was like helping her create this list. And as I just said, like, he's helping her because he understands wholeheartedly what she is going through. Anyways, we're not spending a lot of time on what people didn't like because I don't care. I do care, but I just, truthfully, that's one thing. Like, I know books are subjective, but I loved Lenny so much. I also don't know how many people, and I apologize if you did read them, but for those who didn't, because truthfully, I wasn't usually one to read acknowledgments up until a year ago. But now I love getting like a little inside view, inside scoop into who the author is thanking and why they're thanking them and the people that like were part of their lives during this book. So I would say I probably read like 75% of the acknowledgments of books. And I'm going to pull up my iPad again because I want to read something. There is a blurb in the acknowledgments of this book that I loved. And this was another thing where on top of Goodreads reviews, like somewhat impacting my rating of a book, the acknowledgments can also make a huge impact on my rating. In the acknowledgments of Promise Me Sunshine, Kara wrote, Kara or Kara, I'm not really sure. I'm sorry to how to pronounce her name, but she said, Reader, I would not have been able to write that sentence without you and your role in my life. Reading a book is intensely personal. You are allowing my words into your brain. I have just had a 100,000 word conversation with myself inside your head. Reading a book is precious gift to that author, and I do not take it lightly. You could have watched a K-drama. You could have conducted extensive research on your new hairdryer you want to buy. You could have saved the universe with your video game controller, but instead, or maybe in addition, you read my book, and I cannot thank you enough. I want to talk to you. I'm bad at the internet, so please email me. And I felt like this acknowledgement was just like real. Like, I know sometimes we have like, I don't know, like growing up and I read a lot growing up and I looked at some of the authors of the books that I was reading as like massive celebrities because I either loved the book so much or it just like had a massive impact on me. And I found these acknowledgments to be very like human, I guess I would say, especially that blurb. And I loved it so much. And that's why I wanted to share it with you guys. Another aspect of the book that I wanted to share was obviously in this book, Lenny has created this like live again list. So the author created her own sort of like live again list, which again, like I read this book as a Kindle. So I didn't even realize this existed in the book until I picked up the paperback last night. I was like going over the outline for this book and I was like, I want to include like something else in this episode. And I was like scrolling, I was flipping through the back. And when I finished it on my Kindle, as soon as I like, right before the acknowledgments, if you have a Kindle, you know, it like says like you're finished the book, like go review it on Goodreads. And I had no idea there was anything more to it. So I didn't really go past the acknowledgments. But in case you missed it, this is the author's like live again list that she wrote at the back of the book. Number 1, buy the dress, socks, fedora you never thought you could pull off and wear it to your next appointment, PTA meeting, or dog grooming appointment. 2, go to location in your town filled with all the cool people and buy a stranger a drink, a cupcake, or pay their library fines. 3, gut it out through your older brother's favorite movie. I'm sure it'll be a terrible experience, but you'll surely learn something, right? If not an older brother, then a mail delivery person. Yes, ask your mail delivery person. 4, take a figure drawing, opera writing, croquette workshop from your local library. Choose at random. The only requirement is that you must already be bad at it. Eat pistachio eclairs, pepperoni pizza. Feed yourself, baby. 6, learn a Spice Girls Irish step dance Black Swan choreo. This one is mandatory. Learn a choreo. 7, show the choreo to someone who will laugh their ass off with joy and delight. 8, yeah, Miles is right. Cleaning your house works. Or alternatively, changing up your space. So go buy some, don't know how to pronounce those words, something, paint, and slap a crappy or stunning mural on your wall, freshly dusted bookshelf, or bathroom mirror. 9, here's the worst one. I know, I hate it too. Sit down right now and reply to that email. Whichever email, you know the email. Okay, good job. Now it's time to return to number 5 and the aforementioned pistachio eclair. I've never had a pistachio eclair, but now I'm so tempted to go and buy one after this episode. 10, Finally, one of Lenny's hardest lessons, the phone call. No one can be your Miles if you don't call when you need them. So call up your mom, your old neighbor, your pickleball buddy, your snarky cousin, and the object of your fervent desire and talk, talk, talk. I just love this list. I think even if you're not going through grief, and this is going to be like a little bit more of a broad statement, but even if you're not going through grief, if you're in a funk, you're lost, you're heartbroken, I find that a list of anything, especially random things like that, can help so much more than you know. And this book, I'm giving it 5 stars. I'm gonna give it 5 stars. I think the book itself is 5 stars. The romance is 5 stars. The characters is 5 stars. I genuinely I will say it's not a 6-star read. And for that, like the 6-star reads just like have a vibe about them. And I can't really pinpoint what it is sometimes, but this through and through was a 5-star read. So if you loved this book as much as I do, I have a couple other recommendations for you, with the main one being P.S. I Hate You by Lauren Connolly. Steph, my producer, is laughing in the back because we were just talking about this book the other day. This book is very, very similar to Promise Me Sunshine, but also very different. P.S. I Hate You in around, like, non-spoil. I am so bad at not spoiling books sometimes, but this book follows, and I'm blanking on the man's name, but anyways, P.S. I Hate You follows, what's the guy's name? Dominic?
The friend.
No, yeah, the best friend. It is Dominic. Okay, cool. So P.S. I Hate You follows Maddie, and her brother had recently just passed away, and it has like a little bit more of like, I would say not darker humor compared to Promise Me Sunshine, but it's definitely like Lenny and Maddie are very similar, but Maddie is definitely like a little bit sharper around the edges, I would say. Anyway, so P.S. I Hate You follows Maddie, and her brother recently passed away, and at his funeral, or in and around the funeral, Maddie, his sister, and his best friend Dominic open up a letter from them, and he basically had left them like a bucket list of items to do. There was like 8 states that he hadn't yet visited, so he then asked Maddie and Dominic to go and visit these states and then do a specific task or job or like fun thing. Like, for example, I don't want to spoil it, so which is great because I don't remember, but like go to this state and get a tattoo, go to this state and like jump in the water, like things like that, but that requires them to go all around the US. It's such a good book if you like to travel, if you like rom-com vibes, if you're dealing with grief, or you just like need a little bit of a leg up. It's such like a feel. I would say P.S. I Hate You is not as deep as Promise Me Sunshine if you found this one to be like a little bit sadder. P.S. I Hate You is a little bit more of like rom-com vibes, but definitely has grief interwoven in the story so beautifully. If you liked the writing style in this book, Cara Bastone has another book called Ready or Not. And because I haven't read this book, I am going to read the synopsis for everyone and I'm going to read the synopsis, but I'm going to give a little bit of like I'm going to call it a prologue, like a something. What word am I looking for? Like a heads up. This book has the pregnancy trope, a trope that I hate. And I'm so sorry. Maybe it's because I'm 21 and not looking to have a child anytime soon, but I just can never connect with the pregnancy trope at all. And maybe it's because, no, I think I actually, with the pregnancy trope, sometimes I find like the characters will stick together because of the baby, and they shouldn't. Like, there's the long going thing about like divorced parents should stay together for their kid, but if they're going to fight and they're not going to get along, don't stay together. And I find like with the pregnancy trope, although it's like a fiction book, some characters are just like not meant to be. So Ready or Not by Cara Bastone was, I'm pretty sure, I don't know if it was her first novel or not, but I have been told that the pregnancy trope is not as like heavy in this book. And even those who don't like the pregnancy trope loved this book. This is a synopsis. Eve Hatch is pretty content with her life. Her apartment in Brooklyn is cozy and close to her childhood best friend Willa, but far from her Midwestern traditional family who never really understood her. While her job is only dream adjacent, she's hoping her passion and hard work will soon help her land a more glamorous role. And sure, her most recent romantic history has consisted of not one, but two disappointing men named Derek. It's always Derek. At least she always knows what to expect until she finds herself expecting an uncharacteristic one-night stand. Oh, please tell me it's not with Derek. What? Oh, no, it's not. The unplanned pregnancy cracks open all of the relationships in her life. Eve's loyal friendship with Willa is feeling off right when she needs her the most, and it's Willa's steadfast older brother, Shep, who is willing to step up. He's always been friendly, and now he's checking in, ordering her surprise lunches, listening to all her complaints, and is suddenly kind of hot. Then there's the baby's father. Oh, Shep is not the baby's father. Then there's the baby's father, who is supportive but conflicted. Before long, Eve is rethinking everything she thought she knew about herself and the world. Over the course of 9 months, as Eve struggles to figure out the right next step in her expanding reality, she begins to realize that family and love in all forms can sneak up on you when you least expect it. Okay. I wanted to go into that synopsis blind, so I just screenshotted it and put it on my iPad. I'm going to read it because I loved the writing. But now on top of a pregnancy trope, we are also dealing with a love triangle, it seems. And I'm not really feeling that. But if anyone has read it, and I need to just be a little bit more convinced to read that book. But I've heard people love it, and I love Promise Me Sunshine, so I will be shocked if I don't maybe I won't love the other one, but I have high hopes for it, even considering the pregnancy trope and love triangle. And that pretty much brings us to the end of the episode. I had a hard time finding other recommendations of books in the same light, and I like to give recommendations of books that I had read. So I tried to do a little bit more of a deep dive on grief woven into rom-coms, but I couldn't find many. But if anyone has any recommendations, DM me, comment on the video, let me know. And I'm happy to share those with everyone else. Our June book club pick is coming since we're filming this so early. At the time of recording, I don't currently have it, but when this episode goes live, it will be in the description of the episode, whether you're listening on Spotify or Apple Music or on YouTube. Go check that out and come read our book club book with us in June so then we can wrap it up for season 1 of this podcast. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see you next Thursday.